Hey, ever heard of The Simpsons? Of course you do. Everyone has at least watched one episode of The Simpsons, an adult animated TV show that has been running new episodes since the late 80s. It is a beloved part of modern pop culture, starring the iconic family of the same name. I don't need to explain every aspect of the show to keep everyone at the same page, because everyone has at least watched this show once. Or they used to, because nowadays The Simpsons has become mediocre and dull instead of the groundbreaking comedy it used to be. Because it's been going on for so long, it has become stale and dull. But it doesn't matter to 20th Century Fox, the company who owns The Simpsons, and since it's making money, even at its lowest popularity, now it's gonna keep the rights till the 2080s, but now that's thrown out of the window thanks to the Disney merger. But what's the best way for the giant corporation to capitalize on an award-winning show and milk it for all they have? Merchandise, of course. Simpsons DVDs, comics, towels, food, and the subject of this video, Simpsons video games. Now, since The Simpsons have been going on longer than the Old Testament, there's been lots of different games based on the show, and let's say the qualities of these games are mixed. The 2003 GTA clone, Simpsons Hit and Run, was a well-remembered classic to many and was rated very highly by critics at the time. But sadly, there's other games like Simpsons Wrestling for the PlayStation 2000, which was remembered for being the worst game ever made. And who can remember Simpsons Road Rage, the game that is heavily inspired by Sega's Crazy Taxi so much that Sega has sued the developer Radical Entertainment and publisher Fox Interactive and EA for copyright infringement. But speaking of EA, who owns the video game rights to The Simpsons since 2005, they have tasked EA Redwood Shores, the studio later named to Visceral Games, later known for the Dead Space series, who at the time had been making licensed games like Tiger Woods PGA Tour, 007 games, and a year before the Simpsons game, The Godfather. With 2 years of development alongside working with many of The Simpsons writers, and the first time ever to be provided with over 40 minutes of traditional animation from the artists of the show themselves. So in the end, was it all worth it? Or it become another typical license game? Let's see. The Simpsons game, yep, that's the title. I guess for a long time, Simpsons game has been known for copying other gaming trends to cash in, like GTA, Ninja Turtles, and Crazy Taxi clones from the 6th generation consoles, but with the developing power of electronic art, there's so much potential for original game ideas from the TV show. So what does EA came up with? An action platformer. Yep, that's it. To be fair, the Simpsons game is a decent game, not bad, but not that great either, especially these days. Okay, so what is it about? The Simpsons have just discovered a gaming manual out of the sky that can grant them superpowers that cause ultimate chaos around Springfield. The story isn't much to go on even in modern Simpsons standards, with convenient things happening as if to remind people it's a Simpsons story, like alien invasions, like something out of a Treehouse horror episode, or numerous cameos, homages and references to his own past work to tell you, the audience, that yes, the Simpsons are that old, and yes, we ran out of original ideas, at least for the first few hours. I admit, I like the second half a lot more than the first, because now the humor in the plot is much more about video games, to The Simpsons being transported to a video game engine based on or parodied by real video games. Even with EA being the publisher of the game, they're not safe from being roasted by The Simpsons, and there's even a cameo of Will Wright, the creator of SimCity and The Sims, and he's being made fun of, which were the highlights of the comedy for me.
Oh my god, it's a nerd!
That's right, the nerdiest nerd in the computerverse.
Dad, that's Will Wright, designer of SimCity and The Sims.
Don't forget my biggest flop, Sim Sandwich. Its failure drove me mad. Mad!
But the comedy is a mixed bag. Like, just as much as there's a joke I could chuckle at, there's 3 more that doesn't really faze me at all. What really doesn't work is the actual levels used to parody the real life games that aren't even correct. Like, look at the level NeverQuest. You think it's gonna be based around the EverQuest MMO series, but nope, it's just a parody of Lord of the Rings, instead of what's supposed to be EverQuest. Like, I guess that EverQuest and Middle Earth are both fantasy, but That's not really much of a connection, and I guess that's enough justification for the writers to switch it up. I mean, come on, there's so much potential to create jokes about MMO games. South Park did it years ago with World of Warcraft, and that's rated as one of the best episodes to date. There's even a level called Medal of Homer, which I think is going to be about the Medal of Honor games, but no, it's just a generic World War II level that doesn't even parody Medal of Honor besides the title. The worst possible level is Big Super Happy Fun Game. Get it? Because Japanese games always use random English words in their titles. Yeah, I don't find it funny either. Well, the level is about Japanese games, right? So the best way to parody it is to make the level all bright and colorful and have sumo wrestlers be enemies because Japan. Also Pokemon parodies, because I never heard that one before. Honestly, the only level that aims to parody a game is Grand Theft Auto, renamed Grand Theft Scratchy, which seems to be more like GTA, but it's more like an interpretation of the game by Jack Thompson than anything else. So yeah, the parodies that the Simpsons game provide us are lackluster at best. Besides a few cameos from the Simpsons character and a subtle Easter egg, it's really disappointing. Which really means something, because The Simpsons used to make great parodies of popular shows, movies, and music, and can be as iconic as the source material. I think the reason for this to happen is likely due to the Simpsons writers responsible for the plot and humor of the game were limited as TV writers, so they aren't as familiar to the gaming industry compared to game writers, so they can't make enough clever satirical jokes compared to making fun of a TV show. Also, the Simpsons game came out in 2007, back when there isn't as many comedic games that aimed to mock and satirize the video game industry as name-dropping famous names like television or movie does. One great example is when this E3 2007 game conference in Germany, there was a poster which the Grand Theft Auto Simpsons parody meant to advertise for the game, which actually angered Rockstar Games who were at the conference and wanted the poster taken down, likely due to copyright issues and such. Now, to be fair, other companies have no problem with many of the posters that are based on their games. Studio Harmonix loved the Simpson parody of Guitar Hero, changed to Sitar Hero, because, it's an instrument, and Bapu is Indian. Which is a shame, because all these parody posters that are made, they never actually became actual modes or levels used to change up the formula. Speaking of the gameplay, let's talk about it then. The Simpsons game, like I said before, is an action platformer, which would already sound pretty dull, seeing as how many Simpsons games in the 90s are platformers that are pretty bad. Like this one, it has some form of depth. Like, you can play the Simpsons family member and it can play differently from each other thanks to their powers. Homer can transform into a giant ball and wreck into objects and enemies like a wrecking ball. Bart can grapple onto the hooks and can hover as if there's a gust of wind. But he can attack mainly with his slingshot. Lisa uses her saxophone to stun enemies so she can attack them more easily, but her main power is the Hand of Buddha, which she can control a giant hand of the sky to pick up giant objects, mostly for solving puzzles. Marge is the most different of the cast because her gameplay revolves around creating mobs, so she can use to destroy buildings, and also she can order them to fight enemies for her. She can also occasionally use Maggie to fit into holes and gaps like a first-person sequence to press buttons to get through the level. It sounds pretty fun, right? Well, at first, but when you progress through the game and beat the levels, the game quickly starts to become repetitive. Why? Because the levels don't change. All you had to do is platform, beat up enemies, solve a shallow puzzle to get through a door, and repeat the process again and again. It wouldn't be so bad if the playable characters have depth, but no. All these superpowers I told you about doesn't evolve with no moves or weapons and changes to the gameplay, and the combat is laughably shallow with only one button to punch enemies and nothing else. The Simpsons arcade game made by Konami has more depth than the Simpsons game, and that game came out 15 years before. You think the game would be super long for its repetitiveness and the gameplay to set in, but no, this game is short. Super short. Like, you beat this game at 5 hours on average, which sounds ludicrous even at 2007, when Blu-rays and DVD discs gave developers the chance to expand and lengthen their content of their games than ever before. So that's everything I covered on the Simpsons game. Even after the negative criticism I gave to it, I don't think it's bad or anything. It's a solid yet repetitive action platformer that has enough references, jokes, and parodies for Simpsons fans to be happy for a little while. Now, since the game is 12 years old, it's surprisingly held up a bit better than most licensed games around the time, and clearly there was effort, love, and talent put into the game by both developers and Simpsons writers, and I respect that. These days, if you have a sudden craving for Simpsons-related video games to play, the Simpsons game isn't a bad choice, but you can do so much better. Well, that's it from me, Kem the Chameleon. waking up from my sudden comatose state and delivering you some interesting content. Signing out.